I'm Fernando Mastrangelo, and this is The Path, an interview series that uncovers the business of being an artist. People don't like to think of art as a business. And you know what? I get it. It kind of kills the romance of it. But that's not really realistic anymore. We're trying to grow. We're asking new sets of questions. We're using social media to expand our audience and even get new clients. So we're going to uncover some of the mysteries and strategies behind some of the most successful people in the field today. I want to share those with you so you can really see what it takes to build a successful studio. Today, I'm honored to be sitting with Jamie Drake and Caleb Anderson of Drake Anderson. They're the New York-based interiors firm that's been named one of AD's top 100. They've completed projects all over the world and have an extensive client list from Madonna to Michael Bloomberg. Jamie's been working for over 35 years and have received some of the highest accolades in the industry, including ELLE Decor's prestigious A-list, among many others. A rising star in the industry, Caleb had originally worked for Jamie and then left to start his own firm. But the two are now back together, having formed this dynamic partnership that will help define the next phase of their incredible journey. I wanted to get their view on how they work together, how they find new design, and how they feel about the design fairs and market. So let's jump right in. I'm here with Jamie Drake and Caleb Anderson of Drake Anderson Design Firm in New York. And I wanted to just jump right in. One of the things that really struck me about you two is that the collaboration, this partnership that recently formed. And look, as a viewer, sort of like observing this, it was interesting to me because it's sort of a mentorship type of thing, or it feels like, you come from obviously a younger generation, you've been established for so many years, and after 38 years, right, you decided to sort of form this collaboration, partnership. That must have been a big decision for both of you. And I have kind of questions about that for both of you, but I wanted to sort of, get your view on this, or how it formed and,
Well, it certainly was a big decision, obviously. And you're right, I started my firm in 1978, right after graduation from Parsons School of Design. And I started less by design. It wasn't a conscious, I'm going to start a firm. It was really happenstance. A few days after I graduated, I had some clients approach me. I had some people who I knew, friends, who said, hey, would you like to do these projects? And I was like, okay. So that's how I started. But after 38 years, 37 years, whatever it was, I decided it was time to think about doing things differently.
Why was that?
I think that we were busier than ever. I wanted to make sure our capacity stayed strong. And I wanted to work maybe in a way that was more collaborative. Yeah. And besides sharing the joys and the pleasures, sharing the stress.
Sharing the stress, yeah. Yeah, because definitely, it was that you had been working here obviously previously.
Right, so I actually started as an intern years ago. I'm originally from Texas, and kind of on a whim, I wanted to do an internship in New York. So Jamie's firm was one of the firms that I sent my portfolio and resume to, and I was offered the internship. And so one summer I came up here and interned. And then a period of time later, Jamie hired me, and I worked for him for a few years. Then I left. I went to work for another firm to gain some more hospitality type experience, retail experience. And it was actually when I was at that firm that I had a side project that turned into two side projects. And so, I was like, well, I guess, I'll give this a go and I'll start my company. So I sort of, in a similar fashion as Jamie, unexpectedly started Caleb Anderson Design and had that company for about 3 years when Jamie approached me about merging, and that was something that I never expected to happen, but of course it was an extraordinary opportunity, so I had to say yes.
When I made the decision that I wanted to merge my firm and have a partner, going forward, I made a list of possibilities, possible names, and it really, the more I thought about it and looked at the list and looked at pros and cons, the list got very small very quickly. And my number one choice was Caleb. But I assumed he would say no because he had already made a lot of traction in his own, establishing his own firm. And was one of the things that attracted me to Caleb as a partner was that it wasn't just that he was a good designer, but that he had marketing skills. He had been doing show houses. He was running a company, he had that experience. By that point, had experience working for me for another firm, and prior to me for a brief while, another firm. So we had 3 different experiences. And I just assumed he said no, but I invited him out to lunch on a Labor Day. And he thought we were just having a catch-up lunch. And I think when I popped the question and the pizza was delivered, he almost fell off the chair.
Yeah, I was stunned. I never imagined that's what would come up.
I imagine immediately you start to go through your head and you say, well, okay, so how does this transition happen, right? How do you start? Because there's a little bit of ego involved, I'm sure, where you say, I've been running my own firm, obviously maybe it wasn't. But how did you find to manage those things right away? You know, where did you guys figure out a way to say, okay, in the partnership, it's full collaborative, you know, there's not gonna be, you know, you're gonna work together throughout all of the ideas, even if you do butt heads at certain times. Was that a sort of agreement that you guys came to right away? Or how did you figure that part out?
I think part of it was that it was clear that Caleb said, you know, I don't wanna be a junior partner.
Right.
And I totally agreed that he needed to be a full partner and perceived as a full partner.
Right. That's great.
With everything that comes with it. And that was absolutely in line with my sensibility. And unlike some of the other firms that have subsequently names we know, such as Bunny Williams and David Kleinberg and Coleman and Kravis, who've taken on partners, they did not change their firm names. I was absolutely on board with
I actually love that you did that.
right,
I thought
changing our firm name.
Yeah.
Because that establishes it right there.
Right.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Jamie is he doesn't have an ego. I mean, he was very clear from the beginning that I would have a lot of autonomy, and you know, he's been great in sort of letting me introduce practices and things within the office that work for me that were different from what he was doing.
Yeah.
Has been very open in that way. And I think in reality, you know, Jamie and I, we are different people, and Jamie understands that and you know, lets me be who I am and express myself in the ways that I need to express myself. And so that was something that was important to me that he was very, very understanding about.
And I have to say, here we are 1 month shy of 3 years in the partnership.
Wow.
And I jokingly but honestly say, we've only had one fight in 3 years, and that was over what color to paint a crown molding in a show house. And I think that that's a very good, it wasn't exactly it wasn't exactly a fight, but it was a very fraught decision. And I think that that's really admirable that Caleb cared that much that it became this really big discussion. We had to meet there on site on a Saturday or a Sunday and stare at the crown moldings and stare in the room. And I talked through my rationale for why I was suggesting one color, and Caleb was feeling something else. And I finally said, listen, you make the decision. It's your vision.
Let this one go.
And he went with what he felt was the right thing to do. And I totally agreed upon seeing it and realized looking at it, I go, you know what, that would have not worked as well what I had suggested, but it would have been a holdback from my old vision.
So this now has opened up your views as well as, you know, as possibilities of his vision as well. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think this is where I feel like a lot of people who partner up, they start to worry about these things. The reason I'm asking this stuff is because I feel like the audience and people that, you know, I interact with on social media and things, they want to form partnerships, right? But they become complex. It's very hard. You have to have a very open spirit to be able to do it well. You're saying 3 years, only one minor fight. I mean, I think that's amazing, a testament to your openness.
Is it a fight or
well, not even a fight, it's just a creative,
just discussion.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't consider that a fight. I don't think we've ever had.
I don't think we've had a fight either.
Exactly. That's fantastic.
And I think that I look at our other firms that I mentioned, Bunny and David and ELLE, and you know, I think they've also just gone about it in a great, thoughtful way, and have embraced it. I mean, I've certainly gotten a lot of calls from other people in the industry going, what you did is amazing. How did you do it? How did you decide to do it? How did you figure it out? How did you find somebody? So I've
They're big questions.
minorly mentored some other people in their thought process about it. One person they sold their company. It wasn't an interior design, but it was a related firm, a supplier.
So then what would be a piece of advice for people that would want to start a partnership that you would give the
mentorship can be a two-way street. That it's not always just the traditional notion of the older person mentoring the younger person or the person with more experience. I learned so much from Caleb about processes and things in our office that we do now that we've embraced that I never did before.
And question about the design itself, how has that changed? Did you guys feel like Drake Anderson now has a different sort of approach to the design work itself? And is that changed, or is that, or did you guys both have a similar type of design aesthetic or kind of thinking about design, and that's why this has worked so well as well?
This is always an interesting question for me because I feel like we do so many different types of projects. And the reality is, I mean, you know, right now we have projects that are traditional, projects that are contemporary, projects that are eclectic, and a mix of both. And I think that's one of the exciting things about what we do. But having said that, I think that there's sort of a common thread and a narrative and elements that you find in all of those projects. And I don't know, I mean, Jamie and I, although that we're different, and I would say that I'm maybe more of an editor, you know, I tend to pull things out and he tends to put things in, but it balances out nicely because he pushes me, you know, to make decisions in ways and look at things in ways that, you know, are helpful. And I think ultimately, you know, through a partnership and through a collaboration, the best projects are born. And even in problem solving, I mean, a lot of times, you know, we'll have an issue or there'll be a design issue or something, and, you know, I can't wrap my head around it. I've thought about it or looked at it for a long period of time, and Jamie can walk over and you know, 2 seconds have a solution. So, you know, in a business, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very, very helpful.
There are values to the decades of work, and sometimes I
Absolutely.
do see things quickly, which can also be a negative almost in a way with my working methods, because I do tend to move very quickly, and sometimes not everybody moves as fast.
So there's a lot of young designers. New York is starting. It feels like we're in a new phase a little bit. At least from the designer point of view. A lot of young designers coming up. There's more shows. They're getting more exposure. Social media has really opened this up, I feel, quite a bit. How do young designers, artists, get in front of a design firm like yourself? I mean, you know, it's kind of tough. You know, if people are not doing the fairs or this or that, how do they get exposure? How do they get seen by a firm like a high-end firm such as yourselves if they're interested in that sort of thing?
So I definitely think for the designer artisan area of our market, and people like yourself, Fernando, who are so talented in creating really items and things that are so beautiful, as well as design visions, social media is crucial. And it's a great opportunity to see things, not only from, say, the individual designer's Instagram, and to me it's Instagram, Facebook is dead, but also from other people's who post about them. I think we've discovered a lot of things through other people's
Instagrams.
Yeah.
So you
threads.
feel like, you know, trying to get into the magazines and things like that. You guys still obviously look at all the magazines and this and that. Not as much.
Not as much.
It's changing.
No, I don't have enough time. They stack up. I'm getting on a flight tonight. I'm taking 6 magazines. I'll probably carry 5 of them back with me, but I'm hoping to read them.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the only time that I look at magazines is when I'm on a flight. But yeah, Instagram is huge. I mean, if you look, if I look in my Instagram, there's messages, little things that Jamie sent me. You know, he'll see something and he'll send it, and I'll look. You know, it's a great tool for finding interesting things and new talent, for sure.
And have you found that people DM you and they send you messages and that type of thing, or
Some? I mean, sometimes you'll be tagged in things that aren't so great.
Right.
You know?
I think I'm asking because I feel like some people might feel intimidated to maybe DM and say, "Hey, I really love your work as an interior
So
firm."
that I don't find we have very much. Somebody actually reaching out saying, "Please look at my work."
Yeah, okay.
I think.
And how would you receive something like that? You know, if somebody wanted to sort of, you know, just put their work in front of you, even if it's not, you know, maybe it's not the most fleshed out just yet, but it's something that
I get a lot of emails and even mail of from different artists and different furniture designers and things like that. And I always open it up. I mean, I don't always respond, but I always take a quick look. And sometimes, you know, we see something that's interesting, and, you know, we'll share it with the staff or pin it up on a board. So, I mean, we have found things in that way. But generally, I always, you know, give the courtesy of at least looking at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think you talked about fairs.
Yeah.
There are a huge number of fairs, arguably too many, but I always find them exciting and almost always find one or two things provocative, if not 3 dozen.
Yeah. So you use them. I've actually seen you walking around Chelsea, so I feel like you go out and you look.
I do. It might be partially old school, generational.
Right.
I like to see things in person. I like
Sure.
to see them in the environment of a setting rather than just going to a website and scrolling through.
Absolutely. How about you? You still get out there?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely it's important to go to the fairs and, see things in person. I mean, that's something that we are continuously trying to encourage our staff to do. A lot of times, we get busy and we get caught up in things and we stay glued to the computer screen. But you have to see things in person, and it's not just with contemporary furniture. It's with antiques and other things that we specify. We always want our employees to go look at things in person.
And I'm lucky because I live in the heart of the art gallery district. I live in far west Chelsea.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So I get to pop in sometimes
you're
just
walking
for
home.
45 minutes on my way home to 1 or 2 galleries and get excited or
Sure.
have some thoughts provoked, and it's a good way of keeping percolating.
Yeah. And I always find it interesting that interior firms, interior designers, you guys get to actually kind of watch the pulse of the market a little bit, right? You get to kind of see as trends change, as things, come into trend or fashion, or sort of leave, or things that have lasted the test of time. How do you feel right now that the contemporary market is in terms of furniture and art and this sort of thing? And are you seeing shifts and changes, and what's sort of going on in the behind the scenes, the things that you're seeing and noticing?
I mean, I think that there's constantly something new and interesting that I'm seeing, but I think that's one of the challenges of the market, is because we see things, on Instagram, and things are just constantly put in front of us. It's hard. I think it's hard to kind of find things that are new and interesting. Mm-hmm. But in general, I mean, I think that there are new things that we're seeing, frequent enough, for us to have things to show clients. But I think that social media has made that more challenging.
And I think part of the challenge, of course, is you can see somebody who's really brilliant, but then it becomes so omnipresent and so inspiring to too many others that you need to move away from it, even though the person is brilliant. And I think that will be interesting to see more who in 50 years or 100 years are the Ruhlmans or the Giacomettis of today.
I wonder about that all the time because of what you guys are talking about, the pace that we're seeing things, that how do they last? How do they, last this test of time? Or is a 5-year career kind of like the 30-year career or 40-year career of Giacometti, or that sort of thing? I'm always wondering. And then how does a designer or artist stay relevant, or even in, or just that you'd open their emails and say, oh yeah,
But think about relevancy. I mentioned Giacometti and Ruhlman, but I didn't mention Weisweiler or Boule, the great 18th century furniture makers, whose work is spectacular, but people don't want that today. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to come back. And so you talk about timeless. What does timeless mean?
Oh, so you say we go through maybe a 5-year period and then you dip out, but then you sort of...
It may be more than 5 years.
Okay.
It may be 30, 40, 50-year cycles.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I think that antiques will come back. We think antiques will come back.
Right, there's been a movement, there's been a shift away from...
They're like buried and hidden.
Is it?
It's like Ptolemy's pyramid grave.
Yeah, I was reading an article in First Dibs about that, how the contemporary market has sort of started to really, and you've noticed.
Yeah.
Does that mean because you're presenting things to clients and they're just sort of saying, maybe we...
I think it's partially what they come to us with as a vision.
Okay.
Tear sheets. And we still have clients who come with tear sheets, so somebody's reading magazines.
Right.
Or
they're pulling them off the website
more
too.
than Pinterest, but yes.
Sure.
But they're coming with completely contemporary inspirations for the most part.
Okay. And so are they coming to you with Instagrams too? They're like, hey guys, I found this and I found that.
Absolutely. Clients definitely find things on Instagram, and some of them are interesting and some of them are not.
Yeah.
But
and are you still trying to educate them in the variety of things that they could potentially, be interested in?
I think we always try and guide them and show them something different than what they're putting in front of us. I think that's our job. Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing about Instagram is that they find images or things that sort of give us a point of departure and something to build on, but we're never sort of giving a literal interpretation of what they're showing us.
Right. I think most clients are looking for you to move their needle, some a little, some a lot, but I would say it's maybe only 5% who are literally looking for a facilitator. Somebody said, this is what I want, make it happen.
Of course, right.
Most of them want to see what's out there from your lens and have something created for them, a portrait painted three-dimensionally for them to live in.
Right. Cool. And then do you take them to some of the studios? Is that sort of the routine? Yeah, you go to
definitely
meet some of the people that build the pieces. Okay, cool. Yeah.
And that excites them. I think that's I think it's important for them to see it in person, but it's also a sort of a sales tool for us. When they go to the studio or the gallery or meet the artist, they become inspired and more likely to move forward with a piece.
I'm always trying to suggest to designers or artists to make sure that they have a part of their studio that's clean and nice, just to see some finished work, so that when you invite people, they can experience the work, and then but they can also see how it's made, where the people behind it, and that sort of thing. And I, because I personally feel like we're moving a little bit away from the gallery system in general, because you can have direct contact. You can send me a DM. I can contact you. So I'm always curious about where that line's gonna, how this is changing, where it's evolving to. And so that's why I'm partially asking you, are you taking them to the galleries and this and that? Is that still part of the routine? Is this what they're interested in? Or should artists be coming to you direct and say, hey?
Not every client makes the time to do that. Mm-hmm. But those that do, I think it does make a more compelling reason for them to own something, because they have the story. The story. And they can tell the story for the next 20 years at their dinner party.
That's right. When they buy a table, they say, "Oh, we went and
that's right.
And this and that." Right. Yeah. Okay. So you
wouldn't believe how this is made. The process is so fascinating. Right. The guy's crazy. Whatever. But right. It's a story.
At some point, right? Everyone, you have to tell a story, even with your interiors or even with the pieces that you're purchasing, because at this level, when we're selling to a high-end market, right? So they can afford just about anything. So it really becomes about the narrative, the experience, I feel like, of what they have, what they're buying, right? Mm-hmm. That's the trends that I'm starting to see. And that's what we try to do at the studio. And I've been telling, young designers that's what you have to lock in early on, right? It's like the story, who you are, what you're about, that sort of thing. And then eventually that flows down to the interior designers and the clients. One of the last things I wanted to kind of talk about was these fairs, because we've done them for about 4 or 5 years now. A lot of people are always curious. I mean, I know it's a huge marketplace, but is this where you're finding new talent? Do you go to like sight unseen, some of the younger fairs, or are you sticking to the sort of Collective and Design Miami, the sort of traditional bigger fairs? Where do you see this playing a role, or is it not playing as big a role anymore?
I think it's still playing a huge role. Is it? I think that even at going to an established fair, I think it was it Salon last year?
Salon. It's coming up actually in a couple days. Yeah.
Right. And we have wonderful pieces that Caleb designed that are going to be awesome. Showcased there in the Collector's Lounge.
Charles Bernard. It's a London-based company.
I saw that on your Instagram. Okay.
Yeah. But it's like, I never knew Rosie Lee's work until seeing it there. The lighting stuff. I mean, Amy Lau is certainly one of those people, whether it's her Instagram, whether it's her as a designer, doing a booth is a highly unusual thing.
It's becoming more of is that something that you guys would consider as well to
We've been asked. I mean, I think it has to do with timing and our workload
Sure.
and our ability to take it on. But I think it's something that we have considered and would consider if it was a good fit.
Yeah. But I think we have discovered people at established fairs, and we visit galleries who we have close relationships, like David Gill in London,
Sure.
and find things that we buy. But I think it was last year.
Carpenters, I know that you guys.
Carpenters, yes.
The Kips Bay place had quite a few pieces from
Yes.
Carpenters.
Right.
So then it's really, it feels like it's more, in terms of promotion, you're using social media and that sort of thing, maybe more than the fairs, at least for yourselves and for getting, but is that something that, are you guys thinking about that? Like when you guys want to get your work out, right? Finished homes, interiors and things, what's the first avenue that you think about to get more exposure for your own firm?
I think print's always where we start. If it's a good fit, I mean, I think print's still where we ideally would be, and there's certain publications that depending on what the project is and how it fits, that we would reach out to.
Even though you're saying maybe sometimes you don't have that much time to even read them. This is why I'm asking.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's a little lag time now. Used to be you'd read a magazine the week it arrived. Now it may be a few months later that you're actually catching up.
But generally, the stories that are in print, they do put online as well,
That's right.
and they promote on Instagram.
That's right. Well, that's the thing. I've been trying to figure out that friction. I'm saying, well, if we were looking for it to go straight online, perhaps that's just online is going to sort of become the treasure. I know print has always been. I've always wanted my stuff in print just because I grew up that way, thinking, oh, wow, it'd be cool to open a magazine and see it there. But I'm just starting to see the shift, and I just wonder how everyone else is sort of approaching that.
Well,
shift.
I think if you look at what's happening at Hearst and Condé Nast and Meredith, I mean, the shift is not just happening. It's
maybe happened.
Right. It's and it's engaged, and it will be further so. Yeah. But that just means there's more portals for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Right,
show.
because you'll be able to do it through your own channels and through the print channels. That's right. Do you guys manage your social media accounts? Is that something that you guys? I know you have your personal one, and
right.
You have
I do my personal one. Caleb does our Drake Anderson one and does it very well. Has a little support from one of our staff members.
Yeah, you guys have a nice. It's a nice, group of.
We've recently. I mean, it's sort of become the way that we see it, or I see it, is an extension of our website and portfolio, and we've really focused on just kind of using beautiful images and details from our projects, because we've had, just as we found artists on Instagram, we've had clients find us on Instagram.
Right.
And where I used to advise any designer, if you don't have a decent website, you're out of your mind and you're shooting yourself in the foot. And now you extend it to the next. If you don't have a decent Instagram presence, you're losing great possibilities of market.
I know, I agree. I 100% agree. I mean, it just feels strange sometimes to talk about it so much, but I think it's because it's becoming so prevalent to our businesses in a weird way. And we find clients that way, so, as well, or they find us, and it seems like it's become this nice network. But yeah, the website becomes almost secondary in a strange way.
It could be.
It could be. It's starting to
well, not for what we do, because I think if somebody who doesn't know us is attracted first through Instagram, then they get the chance to dive in deeper.
Right, exactly, right. They get sort of, somebody called it a gateway drug, or the Instagram's kind of a gateway to then come to your website and really dive deep into what you're doing.
And then back to the three-dimensional reality. There's nothing like seeing a material in person.
Right.
I mean,
that's never going to change, I feel like. Right. The physical, seeing the pieces, yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank
you.
This has been great. It's very valuable for the people watching. I get a lot of questions from young designers, and I want to be able to sort of demystify some of the things that may seem overwhelming, between something like starting a partnership or getting your work out into the world today. Getting in front of firms as prestigious as the one that you guys have founded. So, and everyone's asking these questions, and we want to be able to just open up and say, like, look, guys, this is how you do it. This is how you approach it. And having you guys on here is an honor, because you guys have really, done great work. You're very well respected in the industry, and I'm a fan. So
Thank you, Fernando.
thank you guys.
So are we.
All right. Cheers.